All right, so you guys have already learned a little bit about completing the square, and you learned it with circles and ellipses and a little bit with hyperbolas. We're going to be talking about it with parabolas too. Like, what do you do if you're not given the equation in standard form, where you can identify the vertex and the directrix? So here I have the equation of a parabola that you've probably seen from Algebra 1, right, in like general form. Ax squared plus bx plus c. Hopefully you have some recollection of that. And I know that this is a parabola because there's only one squared term. So I only see an x squared. I don't have a y squared. So that's how I can differentiate it from the other conic sections you guys have learned. So that's where I know it's a parabola. In this course, you can have a parabola that opens up and down, or up or down, and you can also have one that opens left and right, which was different from Algebra 1, because in Algebra 1 you were only dealing with functions. So how do I identify which direction this parabola opens? So if I look at the squared term, I have an x squared. So since x is squared, I know it's either going to open up or down. You can make that connection because that's what you guys learned last year. It only opened up and down last year. So that's a good place to start, to know that your x squared is your squared term and you know that it's going to open up and down. I actually know more specifically that it's going to open up because if I look right in front of my x squared term, it's a positive leading coefficient. So that's how I know it's going to open up, which is a great place to start. So I also think another great place to then go with this is think about what does this look like in standard form for us. So you guys have the equation from your formula sheet. So the equation you guys have, and I'll make sure you guys know where it is not on that side, it's actually on the other side. Conic section, circle, and parabola. So I know it opens up and down, so I'm actually going to be using this formula. I tend to use this one more. X minus h squared equals 4p y minus k, and even tells you opens up if p is greater than 0, opens down if p is less than 0. So I know p is going to be greater than 0. Okay, so you know what? I'll write that here. X minus h squared equals 4p times y minus k. Right, they're not both squared. So I'm going to move things around. I can kind of see like my x terms are on the left and my y terms are on the right. So I'm going to move it like that. Okay, so I'll move my x terms to be on one side. I'll just flip this actually. So I'll write 2x squared minus 12x plus 23 equals to y. Now I'm going to leave my x terms and move this y term to the other side. So all I did was kind of just mirror it. So I've got 2x squared minus 12x plus blank equals to y minus 23 because you're moving it to the other side. And if I have a blank on this side, I need a blank on this side. So what's stopping me from being able to complete the square right now? This tip, this leading coefficient. Just like an ellipse and circle and hyperbola, you can't have this leading coefficient. So I'm going to factor that out. So I now have 2x squared minus 6x, because if you divide negative 12 by 2, you get negative 6, right, if I were to factor that back in, plus blank equals to y minus 23 plus blank. Now, it's the same process you guys are familiar with already. I take the middle term, divide by 2. That gives me negative 3. Squared is 9. What number do you actually add right here? It's not just going to be a 9. I have to factor that 2 back in, or multiply it back in, distribute it back in. So I'm really adding an 18. So right now I've got 2x squared. Oh, no, I don't. I will 2x minus 3 squared equals to negative 23 plus 18 gives me, it's kind of like 18 minus 23. What is that? Negative 5? So if we look at this, and then we look at our one up here, it's similar, but if you look, my squared term on the left doesn't have this coefficient, so how can I get rid of it? Right now, the operation I see is multiplication, so I have to use the inverse operation to move it to the other side. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So I've got x minus 3 squared. If you divide by 2, what is that the same thing as multiplying by? It's the same thing as multiplying by 1/2. So now this is my equation in standard form. Right? I could then go ahead and I could say that my center is what? 3, 5. I know that it opens up. Look, there's my 4p. Let's solve for p. 4p equals to 1/2. If I'm going to solve for 4p, I have to divide by 4. 1/2 divided by 4 gives you that p, your p value, is 1/8. What does p represent? The distance between the vertex, or the distance from, I guess I should say, the vertex to the focus. Right? The focus is always inside your parabola. If you go the opposite way, that would take you to directrix, which is a line. Right? So if mine opens up, think that my focus is going to be 3 and then 5 plus 1/8. 5 and 1/8, if you want to think of it like that. Your directrix will be in the other direction. Directrix, it's going to be a horizontal line because it opens up. So it's going to be y equals to whatever 5 minus 1/8 is. Right, or 4 and 7/8. Sure, I can make that number look a little better, but just to give you an idea. So this is how you would do completing the square with a parabola. We're going to do one more, or I'm going to give you a little bit less guidance. So make sure you are taking notes and writing things down to be sure you can clarify tomorrow with your teacher. So let's do this one. So how can we identify, how do we know off the bat that this is a parabola? So we know it's a parabola because we only have one squared term, and in this case, our squared term is y. Right, so what does that mean? Which direction is this parabola going to end up opening in? It's going to end up opening left or right, depending on what p looks like. So the equation that we have from our formula sheet is now going to be the other one. So we've got y minus k squared equals 4p x minus h. So I would write that down so you can make sure yours looks like that a little bit later. So the first thing that I want to do is what? I want all my y terms to be on the left, all my x terms to be on the right. So you have 1/2 y squared plus 4y plus blank equals to, when I move that over, I get a positive x minus 11 plus blank. The next thing I need to do is factor out a 1/2. So I've got 1/2 y squared plus, if I divide this by 1/2, I actually get 8 plus blank equals to x minus 11 plus blank. What's going to go in this blank? Divide by 2 and you get 4, squared is 16. So then what goes over here? When I factor that 1/2 back in, I actually get an 8 right here. So now I've got 1/2 y plus 4 squared equals to x negative 8, negative 11. So 8 minus 11, I believe, is going to be minus 3. And am I done? No, I don't want this 1/2 there. So I'm going to do the opposite, and I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. And I have my equation in standard form. Which direction does this open? My p value, my 4p, equals to 2. Therefore, it's going to open right. Great job.